God's plan, your love story. Welcome to Blueprint for Two.
Hey everybody,
Welcome
back. This is Blueprint for Two,
Yep.
and my name is Pedro,
And I'm Alicia.
and we are
The Menas! You're gonna say it with more like...
It's
The
gonna take me a minute
Menas!
to agree to this.
Alright.
We'll get there. But, I don't even, is this episode?
This is 7.
7.
Yeah.
Wow. Alright, that's cool.
We're about to hit 10.
In a few weeks, yeah.
Double digits.
So we've, what was the last thing we talked about? Green flags last time.
Yeah.
Yeah. So this time we're talking about, I guess, standards. You know.
Yeah. I'm excited for today's topic.
Yeah, it's gonna be a.
Are your standards too high?
Are your standards too high?
And then we're gonna talk a little bit about like getting back into the dating scene.
Sure.
For those that have been out of it for a little while.
Mm-hmm.
Or, they were dating for so long that now they don't even remember how to get back in the game, if we can call it that.
Yeah, it's funny you say that because I was just thinking, do we want to call it a game? Like, is that what we're doing?
It's not a game.
We're not playing games.
Right? But, I don't know. I feel like that, how else would you refer to it? Get back on the dating scene.
Yeah, I don't know. I just don't know that game is the right word for it. But that's what we'll go with for now. Are your standards keeping you stuck?
Candela.
I don't want to put nobody out, but
Go for it. Say how it is.
There are people who the standards are here.
Yeah.
And because of that, you end up as somebody who is still trying to find the one at like 45.
Come on. Yeah.
And so at what point do you think to yourself, you're like, oh, you know what? Maybe, just maybe, I'm expecting too much.
1000%.
Now, it's good to have, like, I guess your self-respect or whatever, and, like, no, like, this is what I want.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. But nobody's perfect.
Right.
And to meet that standard, yeah, again, I'm not trying to bash anybody that has standards. But I'm just saying, if you're like really looking for the one, are you holding yourself back?
Right.
So we'll talk about a couple of differences, like our personal preferences.
Yeah.
And then, or our personal preferred standards. I guess I'll say it that way.
Yeah.
And then God's standards.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So typically, to the physical eye, you look for somebody who has obviously good looking.
Right.
Right?
If you have a type, your type.
Exactly, your type, and, the money or the career, not necessarily money, more so like the career.
Mm-hmm. Like a certain financial status.
Yeah, and like, I guess to an extent, like their social circle or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
We really look at initially, right? The outward appearance.
That's the first impression.
Yeah.
Typically, right?
Mm-hmm.
When you meet someone is their exterior, how they look, who they're hanging around with, what they do for a living. Because it depends also too kind of where you meet them.
Yeah.
You meet them in the workplace or like how we met.
Yeah.
At a work function. It's what meets the eye.
Yeah, that reminds me of this post I saw on Instagram. And it was this guy and this girl, they were talking, and the guy asked the girl, he was better off financially than her, and so he asks her, would you ever date somebody that is like struggling financially? And she goes, no. And he goes, well, to me, you're that broke boy. You know? And, but just making sure, like, don't expect that other person
Right.
to, like, fill in, or like,
Meet you
obviously
exactly where you're at, maybe? Because maybe you're a woman or a man that's making 6 figures a year.
mhm.
And this person that you just met, that you find attractive, or you like their personality, is not making 6 figures. They're probably just at 5 figures. You know? Or maybe they're a little less.
A little less. You're making less than $10,000 a year, and that's a problem.
Okay. Alright, fine. Never mind. Keep it at 5 figures. In the low 5 figures.
Okay, sure.
You're gonna think less of them because they make less money, or you're gonna stop yourself from digging deeper, like to get to know the person
Mm-hmm.
because they make less money than you? I don't know. I think that's, in my opinion, if you ask me, I think that's wrong. Because what if
Yeah.
they're going through a rough patch?
They could be.
What if they're on their way to being the next millionaire and you just downplaying what they're making right now?
Yeah, that's. I mean, so all those things, you know, that's like all like the physical side and the stuff that we look at,
Right.
you know, and then but then there's, more importantly is, or, yeah, more importantly
Mm-hmm.
is, you know, like God's standards, right? Their character, their faith, their maturity, shared values, because, you know, you don't want to be unequally yoked,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Yeah.
So real quick, I just want to read 1 Samuel 16:7.
Mm-hmm.
It says that the Lord does not look at the things that people look at. People look at the outward appearance, but the Lord looks at the heart.
Amen.
So that ties in, you know, to what I just finished saying. I think that, yes, have your standards,
Mm-hmm.
but also more importantly, ask God to show you. I mean, because, you know, God's gonna give you the desires of your heart,
Yeah.
right? And then so have those things that you want, but don't put that above like how God says a man should be or how God says a woman
Right.
should be, you know, because that's what really matters. Because when you carry that long term, because marriage is hopefully a lifelong thing,
Right.
right?
This is
Should be.
Divorce is not on the table.
And you know that outward stuff is only going to go so far,
Right.
right? But that godliness, that's what continues,
Mm-hmm.
right? That's really what you're gonna have for the rest of your life. Obviously, we grow and stuff and have our seasons,
Yeah.
but you know, having that firm foundation in Christ, you know.
Mm-hmm.
So,
I think too. I mean, we talked about this the other day, but can we talk about how you don't marry your type?
yeah,
Like, a lot of people say that, and it's very few people that I know personally
mm-hmm.
that say, yeah, I married my type. Typically you don't, because there has to be some sense of compromise, and I think that when you kind of weigh out what you were just talking about, the godly values and things that we need to look at versus the things that meet the eye, like you have to give somewhere, you know. You want to talk about your type, or I talk about my type first?
I don't think we need to talk about our types, but we can just say that because we're married now, so our types don't matter anymore.
They
so
don't. But just so that people can get like a actuality of how much not our type we are.
Yeah, so we didn't marry our type in this scenario,
Right.
but really and truthfully, And growing up, I only asked God, I was like, yo, let her be Puerto Rican.
Okay.
That was my only ask.
Right. And mine was only that he had light eyes, or, you know, it ran in his family because I want my kids to have light eyes. Had to be Puerto Rican, and obviously love God above all things. And we talked about this already.
We did.
But he couldn't have no hair on his chest because God knows. God knows. We would have went for some laser hair removal.
No, we wouldn't have.
We would have went for some waxing.
No, we wouldn't have.
No hair.
No.
Can't do
but
it.
This again comes back to that physical standard.
Right, but
Wait, hold on. I'm not done yet. This goes back to the physical standard we were just talking about. So yeah, you got me.
mm-hmm.
I do have the light eyes. I am Puerto Rican. Don't really have chest hair at all. And so, but let's say I did. What is that a deal breaker for you? I'm gonna put you on the spot. Is that a deal breaker for you?
I don't know if it's a deal breaker for me.
I'm hurt.
I think God would really have to touch my heart. Is
deeply hurt.
God knows
Mm-hmm.
how does. No offense to men that have lots of chest hair, all right, or are very hairy men, but God knows how much that deeply makes me uncomfortable. It's bad. Okay?
I'm just saying.
God would have to do a thing in my heart.
Going back to those standards.
But then again, so like, if I go back to like my 16, 17-year-old list, I told God I wanted my husband to be, 6 feet tall, and I wanted him to have a six-pack, and I wanted... Right. And I wanted him to be like super like tan.
I'm not going to take any of this personally.
No, please don't. Because I removed that stuff off my list after I realized I wasn't going to get my picture perfect man. Plus all the godly things. That's where I said like there has to be some type of compromise somewhere. Because if you're looking for the perfect man that you are describing to God that you want, I'm not gonna say God can't do it, right? But be open to other options. And I think that when you meet the right person, your personalities and your characters will click so well that you're gonna overlook and you're gonna forget everything else that you ask God for in a man or a spouse.
Yeah, I see that, but that's why it's so important to like really have a close relationship with God, right? So because above all things, right, you do want to seek God and have Him be the center of your life, and you're focused on pleasing God, not man.
Right.
And when I think when the time is right, God will bring somebody that maybe not perfectly matches everything you wanted,
mm-hmm.
but God knows, hey, this is the person that you need.
Right.
Right. So
That
hopefully, I used to pray it, was make me the man that my wife is gonna need.
Yeah.
And in doing so, I carried on about my life and my walk with God,
Mm-hmm.
and I met you. And I really wasn't
a very patient man.
I really wasn't looking to
Yeah.
be in a relationship when we met, but
Me either, honestly. I just
Like
told God, like, I'm by myself. It's me and you, God, until the man that you want, for me comes.
mhm.
Little did I know.
Yeah, like I said, I was definitely not looking for a relationship, and I met you, and it was just like, dang, like it's weird. It was like and we talked about this I think in our first episode, but it was like a light switch. It just went off
Yeah.
And I was like, that's it. I'm done. There's no more, because I just knew.
Yeah.
And but part of that I think was because our first conversation, it was all about God.
Mm-hmm.
Like, yeah, we talked about ourselves, like where we're from and stuff like that. But I think the majority of our conversation was about like
Ministry,
and church
God.
and God and
Yeah.
all that wonderful stuff. And that's what lined us up together. 'Cause
Yeah.
if and this is another thing. This is why it's important to share your faith with others, because had we talked about something else
Yeah.
when we met, had we kept it just, oh, there's a work function, we'll just
Kept it
keep it like
business.
a little kind of like business.
Mm-hmm.
Had we just kept it at that, the interest may have never been there.
Right.
We might have never thought, oh, yeah, actually this person,
Yeah. That's so true.
I always find it funny though that we said hi to each other and
Paid no mind to each other in that first conversation.
didn't think twice about it, and we just kept going on about our business that night. And then we got reintroduced
Yeah. It's funny.
later
It's
that
like,
night, and then the way that we got reintroduced was you were talking to my boss, and I walk up and he goes, and this is Pedro, and he leads worship at his church. Like that was like my, I guess the real introduction.
Yeah.
And he, that's how it started off. Like that was bullet point number 1.
I see God saying like, did you not catch it the first time?
Yeah.
And because you didn't, I'm gonna just send him
I
back
was thinking
around.
that. I was like, hold on, maybe you guys weren't paying close enough attention. Let's run that back real quick and get you guys to connect. But
And then the other part too is that my coworker was absolutely gorgeous.
it's really funny you say that, because when I told the guys, because a few days later there was another like work thing.
Mm-hmm.
There was like a continuing education course or something like
Oh, I
that.
remember.
And I was talking to some of my buddies there, and they were like, one of them was like, yo, why'd you go for that one? Why didn't you go for like the really hot one? And I was like, no, I just clicked with her. Like, I mean, she was very pretty and all, but like, in my head, I was like, she's getting like way too much, those kind of girls. I think you get way too much attention.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, I don't,
Right.
But it was so funny. He's like, but the really hot one. And I was like, no, dude, it wasn't about that. It was about the connection that we made on God.
Yeah.
Um,
Thank God, because man, she would have had me beat. She would have had me beat.
And you're beautiful. And
Oh, did you say I'm beautiful?
yes,
I love you.
I love you too. But like my standards weren't. I don't know that I had standards. Not gonna lie.
Okay, that's okay.
Because I wasn't looking for a relationship.
Mm-hmm.
And God was just like,
I'm gonna just slide her in.
yeah. But like my
And I felt bad for the girl because
why?
she was going through a breakup, I think.
I did not eat that mess.
I know. When you and I met. And then she like got into this toxic relationship, and I'm over here like, oh, I met the love of my life and we're gonna get married, and she's over there suffering. Yeah, I kind of felt bad, but at the same time I didn't, because
But also, she wasn't a believer, and I'm not saying
Right.
like non-believers don't find the love of their lives, but it's different for us.
Yeah.
I would say, because we have that peace and assurance that God is gonna work everything out for us.
Mm-hmm.
It's not magic. It's not like
No.
He does everything for you and hands it to you on a silver platter. No, you gotta walk this out, and
Yeah.
you gotta move. But I didn't let like my standards, get in the way of you, right? Because I guess we'll talk about the standards. So like, I like, women with big butts.
Yeah. I like big
That's-
butts and I cannot
don't do
lie.
that. And
I don't got the butt.
I still love you, right? But that was, if you had asked me, like before we met, like, yo, what are you like must-haves,
Yeah.
right? Puerto Rican, big butt. My list was not very long. But when we met, it wasn't even like I wasn't even looking at you that way.
Right.
It was. I think
Thank God, because
it
you
was the
would have been
first
like,
time in my life that I met you,
Yeah.
and I wasn't thinking about, oh, like, does she have this, does she have that? Like, there was none of that.
wow.
It was just, yeah, I like this.
Yeah.
This is nice.
It was hilarious because all the guys inside that know you were like, oh my God, he likes you. And I said, stop hyping me up. I said, leave me alone. Because he probably doesn't like me that much.
I married you,
Yeah.
so I did like you that much.
Yeah.
But, I mean, that's how I didn't let my, like, what I wanted in my mind to get in the way of that feeling. Actually, it wasn't even a feeling. I'll call it knowledge. The knowledge of, I know you're going to be my wife. Like,
Yeah.
I didn't, take a step back and be like, oh, but does she have this? Does she have that? Like, my priorities? No, that's not what we're saying. My
Preferences?
preferences, my standards.
Mm-hmm.
Like, when I met you, those were the last things on my mind.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. I can say the same for me.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I was kind of going down my checklist as we were talking, but it was more so personality-wise.
Mm-hmm.
And, like, the godly stuff we were talking about. So, like, we're talking about worship and about God. And, I didn't say that I did want my husband to be a worshiper, whether it was, like, a musician or a singer.
You know what's really funny? So I'm sorry to cut you off, but there, like, in my head, I always knew that my wife would be a dancer.
That's so funny.
And I don't know why I just knew that. Right? I was like, my wife's gonna be a dancer. That's like, she's gonna, like, her expression of worship is gonna be dance.
Yeah. That's crazy.
Like, it's weird because I knew that like years before I met you.
Yeah.
Like, I just, it was weird. I just knew, I was like, my wife's gonna be a dancer. And then in talking to you, I don't know if it was like that same night or in continuing to get to know you,
Yeah.
that you told me that
I
you
think it was
danced
that
in
same
church.
night.
And I was just like, huh,
Funny.
interesting.
Yeah. Yeah. It was.
But again, that's why,
Mm-hmm.
are your standards keeping you stuck?
Right.
Like, are you too busy looking at the exterior instead of the heart of the person, whether for a husband looking for a wife or a man looking for a wife or a woman looking for a husband?
Mm-hmm.
Like, are you too stuck on the exterior to see past that and see, like, the godly woman that God put in front of you
Yeah.
and say, hey, I bless this.
Right.
You
And then
know?
even after we knew, because it took me up to the first date, but after we knew that we were like, we had the assurance, you had it for yourself and I had it for myself, that we were supposed to be for each other. We still sought confirmation from God.
Mm-hmm.
We got it like 5 times. And I think that's super important, when you're dating. But we're talking about high standards. So I would just be realistic. 'Cause I want to start to wrap it up. Running out of time here, but just be realistic. Like I said, it's not that God can't give you the exact thing that you're asking for, because He can do it. If it's in His will, He can do it.
Mm-hmm.
But don't be opposed, or don't be closed off to other options that may have the same exact qualities that you're looking for in a husband or a wife. Obviously godly qualities.
Right.
You know. We talked about the green flags in our last episode. The fruits of the Spirit. You see the fruits of the Spirit? I mean, at least be open to getting to know the person. Not saying you have to marry them, but
Right.
at least be open to the idea. And I think God will just align everything else afterwards. Because like how we talked about initially, when we met, didn't pay each other no mind.
Right.
Not that, like, I didn't find you attractive, but in our first conversation, I didn't think anything of you.
Yeah.
Not attractive, not unattractive. It was just a man that I was talking to, and that was it.
You meet a person at a work event, and you're like, not gonna remember that name.
Right. Exactly. Exactly. But yeah. Anything else you want to say before we close out?
Yeah, just again, I kind of talked about it already, but you know, I didn't like what I wanted. I didn't think about really,
Mm-hmm.
just because I had the knowledge and the certainty of, I just met like a really good godly woman,
Yeah.
you know, and I didn't start going down my, 2 or 3 things on my checklist. That wasn't a thought,
Yeah.
I'm thinking about it now because this is a topic of our conversation, but I can honestly say it's never been like a thought for me.
Yeah.
I've never thought, oh, she doesn't have this on. She doesn't do,
Right, because then you start to overthink.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I don't know. I was gonna say something and then I totally blanked. Dang, what was I gonna say?
Don't know.
I can't remember.
That's okay.
I guess it wasn't meant to be.
Guess not. But, don't get... I would encourage everybody to just look past the superficial.
Definitely.
Don't get stuck on, the looks or anything. Like, all that fades,
Yeah.
but if you look past that, if you look at the heart, like God does,
Mm-hmm.
I mean, He'll show you, yes, this is blessed,
This is your person. Yeah.
And don't get caught up in so much in like, oh, what would people say, or nothing like that. You're not marrying the people,
Right.
you're marrying the person.
Exactly.
But,
Obviously have wise counsel around you
yeah,
to, give you direction as far as a relationship. But other than that, shoot, we did our stuff so backwards.
we for real did.
Like, I'm sure there was people out there talking about, yo, she's wild.
They're crazy.
Yeah. Like, she really thinks he's gonna marry her. He hasn't even proposed yet. Is she forcing him into this? I'm sure there was so much stuff that people said. I could care less.
Mm-hmm.
Because I knew you and I knew your heart. And I knew the wise counsel around us. And I knew that what we were doing was God-led. And that nobody could tell me nothing.
Yeah.
Honestly.
Yeah, because we knew that God was going to take care of it.
Yeah.
We were certain of that. So, yes, have your standards,
Definitely.
but don't set them so high.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it would be real wise to, like, yep, or put your stuff down, right? Like
Right.
the things that you want.
Definitely.
And but pray, God, like, make me the man or woman that is going to be a fit for my spouse,
Yeah.
you know, and
That's
ask God
very
to show
important.
you, like, what you really need,
Mm-hmm.
you know. Like, for example, you always tell me to be nice,
Yeah.
right? But I told you from day one, I might not always be nice with you, but I'll always be right with you,
Yeah.
right? And that's what, more than nice, that's what you need,
Mm-hmm.
you know. And the same thing, it's not just one way,
Yeah.
you know what I mean? Like, there's plenty of times where I'm like, I'm doing something and I'm set on doing it a certain way. And you say, well, what about trying it this way or whatever?
Yeah.
And, you know, I was like, okay, you know what? That makes more sense.
Mm-hmm.
You know, so being able to be, like, corrected. I don't want somebody that, you know, would just do everything I said. Actually, I think that's one of the things I told God too. I was like, she has to be able to say no to me. She's got to be able to say no to me. But if not, I'm gonna run her over.
Yeah. Do I say no to you?
Yes.
A lot? I don't think so.
I don't know about a
I
lot,
think it's a fair
but
share.
I don't know. I don't know that you say no a lot.
Or
but
like,
but when you do, I mean it in the sense of, like, when you gotta say no,
yeah,
like, you say no.
yeah.
You know what I mean? That's what I mean.
Okay.
I'm not just saying no to everything. No,
Right,
I'd be
right.
miserable. Are you kidding me?
Yeah, no, we can do that.
No.
I remembered what I was gonna say earlier,
Uh-huh.
and is that instead of focusing so much, because I like, you know, I think we kind of said it earlier. We focus, or people tend to focus so much on their standards,
Mm-hmm.
right? Focus on what you're bringing to the table.
Yeah.
Like what you said earlier, I prayed the same prayer. I said, God, make me the wife that my husband is gonna need. Pray that prayer and ask God to make you into the person that your spouse is going to need. And then prepare yourself so that you know what you're bringing to the table.
Yeah.
You know, by your character, by your finances, you know, like, and, you know, go down the list. God, what am I bringing to the table? You know, because we get so fixated on that other person that we forget about ourselves
Mm-hmm.
and what we have to do to prepare for that spouse.
Yep. That's right. But I think that is our time.
It is. It is. We're going to have
so-
to leave this, getting back into the dating scene or
Yeah.
back in the game.
There's got to be a better way to say it, but yes.
We'll leave that for next week's episode, so stay tuned for next week.
Yep.
In
Check
the
it out.
meantime, thanks so much for joining us. Don't
Thank
forget to like, comment, share, and subscribe. You never know who this will impact or,
Bless.
you know, bless. Yeah, so again, thanks so much for connecting, guys. We'll catch you guys next week.
Yep. Peace.
Bye.